Despite the fact that we're all seeing the inflation rate start to come down, economists are still expecting that we're going to reach a recession in 2023. And so that's what I want to talk about in this video. And so as you guys smash that like button, let me run that intro. What's up, guys, and welcome back to the channel. And this is probably not news to a lot of you guys. I know a lot of you guys are expecting a recession in 2023. The question is, and what I want you guys to let me know in the comments below is, do you expect a long and prolonged recession, or do you expect it to happen and end in 2023? That's kind of what I want to know from you guys who watch this channel, because you guys are a different type of breed, because you guys, are watching finance channels as sort of just like your day-to-day. So, you're probably more up on this, but I want to know sort of like what you think. Now, let's get into this. The Wall Street Journal just recently did a survey, and they still see a recession this year despite the easy inflation. And so effectively, forecasters have put a 61% probability of recession in the next 12 months. And so you can see the last time people were forecasting this level of recession was, of course, right before the pandemic lockdowns, or I guess it kind of was in the pandemic lockdowns, and then it just never happened because of all the quantitative easing. But essentially, this spike has now returned as we start taking that quantitative easing off. And, the last time things got this bad or people expected a recession was essentially during the banking meltdown, right? And so, despite signs that inflation has started to recede even, and I'll show you that in the next chart, economists are still expecting higher interest rates to push the U.S. economy into a recession in the coming year. So that's very interesting. But, really what it is they're expecting the impacts of those higher inflation rates higher interest rates to play out through the economy and really slow things down. And I do expect that they're probably going to be right. And so here's that lower inflation rate, or lower forecasted inflation rate. So this is the forecast by economists as of January of 2023. And so notice here that by the end of 2023, that's when they expect inflation to get back into that 2% range. And that's kind of crazy because we're still in like that 6% area right now. So that's a massive decline on a percentage basis, a percentage, of course. And so the recession is expected to happen in 2023, despite the fact that economists expect inflation to decline significantly. So very interesting. They surveyed 71 economists from January 6th to January 10 of this year to sort of get these numbers. And so they're very interesting. I want to know what you guys think. Do you think we hit 2% inflation, or we're in the area of 2% inflation by the end of this year? Or do you think we remain elevated, or do we go even under? Do we go even like backwards if things get really bad? I want to know what you guys think is going to happen. Now, personally, I think everyone's a little bit optimistic on inflation coming down. I don't think inflation comes down as fast as economists are predicting, but, I don't really have anything to back that up. I always just think from a pessimistic perspective. I do want to show you guys something. If you ask CEOs, they actually expect a U.S. recession, but they're also being very optimistic. Most think that it'll be short, and so most executives survey expect growth to return back in 2024, and they're trying to weather a slowdown without widespread job cuts. And so, I think if more and more people do this, you're just effectively holding on to staff that you may not necessarily need. But it is a tough environment right now for labor still. And so you might just have to hold on to people. And so, I think it's probably a good thing to keep people employed over the long term. But, does that still lead to sort of like wage inflation? Who knows, right? You guys know this better than I do. And so despite accepting the fact that a recession is on the horizon, CEOs are being, I think, in my opinion, being quite optimistic about the potential length and severity of a potential recession. And, the way I think about recessions is, the quote that I always say, and I don't know who made this quote, but the quote that I always say is, expect a recession to last long enough, or a bear market to last long enough for you to believe that the bear market will never end. And then expect euphoric markets to last long enough for you to expect that the euphoria will also never end, or not end anytime soon. And same with the bear market. You don't expect the bear market to end anytime soon. That's how long you expect these things. And so anytime anyone is saying, look, I expect things to get bad, and then I expect them to get better, like a year later or whatever, I always think, it's probably going to be way worse than that, and so who knows? But I'm just looking at this from a sort of like a pessimistic perspective. And so what does that really mean? And I think what it really means is that, focusing on those 4 questions of, the way that Warren Buffett invests, making sure that it's a great company, making sure it has a great moat, making sure that you can see what the company's going to look like in the future, making sure that that the management is working for you and making sure that you're buying it for an appropriate valuation. I think those 4 tenets become so important, especially in this environment. I think it's a value investors environment, and there are going to be some people who are going to be picking up falling knives as they're picking up the share prices of companies that even at their reduced share price levels are still overvalued. And so we'll see how this plays out. And of course, we'll see what kind of investments, essentially stock choices, are profitable in this environment. And here's something that probably might surprise you. So this is a question that they asked the economists, and they said, when do you expect the Federal Reserve to reverse course and make its next rate cut? Notice that the vast majority of people expect a rate cut before Q1 of 2024. Only 13% of the people, and these are just rounded numbers, so they might add up to like 102 or something, but essentially 13% of the people believe that the rate cuts will happen beyond 2024. So effectively what's happening is the majority of people are expecting that the Federal Reserve is going to go too far, push the economy into a recession, and have to reverse course. And so, what this really speaks to is how the Federal Reserve does not have any credibility in the eyes of economists. And so they're really betting against the Fed. And so, they say right here, economists in the survey expect the Fed will need to raise the benchmark federal funds rate target to 5% this year, in line with central bank's own projections. However, once again, they expect the Fed to reverse course before the end of the first quarter in 2024. And so what exactly is happening here? Why would the Fed raise rates in 2023 only to reduce them 2 quarters later? It doesn't make a lot of sense. It doesn't seem like that's how the Federal Reserve would be thinking. And so what this really looks like is a game of chicken that the investors are playing with the Fed. And that's exactly what sort of like even the Wall Street Journal has reported. You can see that they put out an article actually saying that the markets are actually locked into a game of chicken with the Fed. Investors are betting that the Fed will cut interest rates as early as the second half of next year, but the central bank says otherwise. So I want to know what you guys think. What quarter do you think the Federal Reserve will cut rates? I don't know how to think about this, but it just seems very optimistic even in this environment. And then when I look at the securities prices, at least on the tracker, the Patreon tracker that you can get access to at that lower tier, even the Patreon tracker suggests that securities are still a little bit pricey in this environment. When you look at other indicators of the stock market, things still suggest that the stock market is somewhat expensive. And so I'm not going hand over fist and buying stocks in this environment. I'm waiting for the opportunities to come to me. But that's another question I have for you guys. What are you guys doing in this environment? Are you buying stocks right now? Are you waiting? What are you doing in this environment? I'd love to hear from you. Let me know in the comments below. Now, speaking of this economic environment, one market that just got a little bit more competitive is that sort of broadcasting connective TV advertising market, because Alphabet is now challenging Roku and Pluto. And if you haven't seen that video, I just put up a video about that right here.